Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Robin Dwyer. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. 20 people die and dozens more are missing as torrential rains and flooding batter northern China for a fourth day. Russia blames Ukraine for a second drone attack on a Moscow skyscraper as both sides use the technology on targets away from the front line. France pulls its citizens out of Niger after its coup following protests and attacks on the French embassy in the capital Niamey. And England progress in the Football Women's World Cup, defeating China 6-1 as the Steel Roses bow out of the competition. At least 20 people have died and dozens are missing in China's capital, Beijing, and the surrounding areas due to severe flooding. Heavy rain brought by Typhoon Doksuri continues to batter northern China. Emergency funding has been issued to boost rescue efforts in remote areas. Our correspondent Chen Mengfei is in the city of Zhuozhou near Beijing. So what's the situation where you are now?
Yes, Robin. So actually, just about 5 minutes before we went live, it started raining again. But for the most of the day, it was not raining. But it's important to stress that the situation on the ground is still volatile and is still very severe. I'll give you an example. When we got here about an hour ago, the water under my feet was about 2 to 3 meters back. And just within the last hour, even though it was not raining, the water level continued to rise. And what that says is that even though the heavy rainfall we're seeing right now might stop in an hour or so, but the flood pressure from upstream will continue to add pressure. All this water that's been fallen on the ground in the region in the past few days will continue to add pressure in the region. And you can see behind me, it is a logistics hub where people's packages and mails have been completely flooded. But this is not the top concern for the government. As the Chinese President Xi said today, the priority is to rescue people who are still missing. And, you know, as you mentioned, there have been already a dozen of casualties. Here in Zhuozhou, we know that there are still people trapped in their houses. The water is about 2 to 3 meters high, and you know it's really hard to do this rescue at night when it's really dark. Rescue volunteers from all over China have gathered here in the region. We've met all these people driving 6-7 hours with their boats that they fundraise for themselves in the region, and they're ready to start working, I'm sure, during the night and then tomorrow, first thing in the morning.
So this is obviously causing major disruption. What measures is the government taking to try and help?
Yeah, so as we speak, obviously the flood is a huge issue. So the governments around the region, they have been continue to do inspections of the drainage system. Earlier, we encountered, the police and the army forces reinforcing the riverbeds to prevent further flooding within the city. In the meantime, we heard top government ministries like the finance ministry releasing a fund to the governments in the region to help them with the rescue, with the rebuilding, and most importantly for people, hundreds of thousands of people have been relocated from their house and they need food, they need water. So the most basic supplies, these all have been issued by the government and the effort is ongoing. Like, it's 10 p.m. here in China and we're still seeing police officers, and local administrative people all over the city just still trying to help people and still remain vigilant above all.
Chen Mengfei in Zhuozhou, thank you very much. Well, Luo Meiqi is from the China Meteorological Administration. She's been telling CGTN about the continuing heavy rainfall.
Well, the extreme rain really battered parts of northern China over the past few days, and this prolonged and widespread precipitation also shattered some records in some places like the county of Lincheng, Hebei province, where the annual amount is just 526, but this time we almost had around 1,000 within just 48 hours. Well, let's look at the culprits behind. You can see we had the remnants of Doksuri across Beijing, Hebei, Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei region, plus ample moisture coming from south, also including from the 6th Typhoon Kanu, which we will talk about later. But good to know is the rainfall is about to shrink down. For example, today we have some thundery showers and localized moderate to heavy rainfall. While looking to Wednesday and Thursday, there could be lower rain chances. For example, here in Beijing, we could anticipate some thundery showers from Tuesday to Thursday, but daily highs may surge into lower 30s once again.
Well, we just heard about Typhoon Khanun, which is approaching Okinawa in southern Japan. Hundreds of flights have been cancelled and thousands of people advised to leave their homes. The 6th typhoon of the year has already brought more heavy rain to the Philippines. The country is still feeling the effects of Typhoon Doksuri, which left over a dozen people dead. Typhoon Khanun is expected to move across the East China Sea on Wednesday. As Ukraine's counter-offensive against Russian forces continues, representatives from both sides have condemned attacks carried out far from the centre of the fighting. Russia has blamed Ukraine for a drone attack on a skyscraper in Moscow. The drone is a weapon that both sides are using more away from the front line. Our correspondent Yolo Abdavith reports.
The battlefield in southeast Ukraine. Army volunteers pushing forward, trying to regain what they see as their national territory. The fighting is hard, with casualties mounting on both sides. The other war is far from the Donbass. Overnight, another building is bombed, this time in Kharkiv.
They hit civilian targets. There were no military there. There's nothing here connected with the military. From what we understand, one person has been wounded.
In Russia, a building that houses a government's department was hit by another drone, the latest in a series of attacks that's targeted Russia and Russian-controlled territory. In a rare public appearance, Valery Gerasimov, Russia's armed forces chief of the General Staff, has visited Russian troops inside Ukraine. He's said to have met soldiers at a command center in the Zaporizhzhia region. Gerasimov was criticized for many months by Wagner mercenary leader Yevgeny Prigozhin and several Russian military bloggers over Russia's failings in this conflict. Ukraine's army are developing their use of drones. They've been used without identification as well as by their regular army units in the field.
Any movement to the right or left significantly changes how your drone flies, especially as the enemy has a highly developed electronic warfare system, and it causes a lot of inconvenience. You can't work from the same position many times because the enemy reacts to it and jams our drones. So we're constantly looking for new targets and fly the drones from different positions.
Even in war zones, people want respite. Ukrainians with a limited choice of destinations are holidaying where they can. The coast and rivers are too dangerous to visit, but at this estuary near Mykolaiv, it's the natural habitat that's now under threat by people this summer trying to forget the war.
The main problem isn't the tourists themselves, but their cars and tents. They're placed in a chaotic way. The tourists don't know where it's all right to leave a car and where it is not, so they park wherever they want. That's how plants and the vegetation are being destroyed, and the noise affects the birds nesting here.
People want to relax when and where they can, while camping while their country is at war. As well as rebuilding towns and cities, Ukraine's natural environment will also need more protection the longer the conflict continues. Yolo Abdavith, CGTN.
Well, let's head to Russia and talk to our correspondent Isabel Nakiria, who's in Moscow. So, Isabel, a second drone attack on this Moscow skyscraper. What's the Kremlin saying about it?
The Russian Foreign Ministry says Moscow came under attack in the early hours of Tuesday morning. It says 2 drones were destroyed, but one crashed on one of the high-rise buildings in the city center and destroying the 21st floor, but no one was injured. But Moscow's Vnukovo airport was closed for temporarily, and flights were redirected. The Foreign Affairs Ministry also condemns the attack, comparing it to the 9/11 twin bombings in New York City, saying why Ukraine should target residential buildings in the city. This same condemnation was aired by the UN Human Rights Office that say that drone attacks shouldn't be in populated areas. The attacks come just days after President Zelensky was seen on video, saying that the attacks on Moscow are inevitable and war was gradually coming to Moscow. But the Kremlin says that it's taking steps to avert such attacks, but did not mention what kind of security measures they were employing and say that the military had the expertise to say it.
And Isabel, Russia also saying that it has thwarted Ukrainian attacks on Navy and civilian ships in the Black Sea.
Yeah, the foreign ministry also said that it thwarted attacks on the Black Sea on its warships and civilian ships, and said the civilian ships were heading towards Istanbul. But the Kremlin has denied it, saying it's a fictitious and there's no shred of truth in any of the claims. But it did not make it clear whether the claims that Russia was saying were on civilian ships. It just said that it's not true. They denied the attacks.
Isabel, thank you very much. Our correspondent Isabel Nakuria in Moscow. The Taliban has held its first direct talks with the United States since returning to power in Afghanistan 2 years ago. The meeting in Qatar saw the group raise the issue of Western sanctions and travel bans and the possible return of central bank assets held abroad. Washington said it was open to further talks on economic stability and combating drug trafficking, and said it had raised concerns over human rights violations. China has called on citizens to join the fight against spying. The country's Ministry of State Security has established a new platform on China's messaging app WeChat, allowing the public to report suspicious activity. A revised anti-espionage law took effect in July, broadening the definition of spying and expanding powers of investigation. Last month, the director of the CIA said the United States has made progress in rebuilding its spy networks in China. At least 17 workers have been killed when a crane collapsed during the construction of a bridge in western India. Several others are feared trapped at the site about 80 kilometres from Mumbai. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has expressed condolences and offered government assistance for affected families. The military governments of Burkina Faso and Mali have voiced support for the leaders of a coup in Niger. They warned that any military intervention in Niger would be considered a declaration of war against their two countries. It comes after Niger's military detained a number of senior politicians after seizing power last week. Those arrested include former government ministers. France is evacuating its nationals and other European citizens from Niger. It follows anti-French protests and attacks on the French embassy in the capital, Niamey. Well, our correspondent Ross Cullen is in Paris. So, Ross, how's this evacuation process going?
Yeah, Robin, the French Foreign Minister said that the safety of citizens was her top priority. And there was a statement released this morning that said, due to the attacks that have been taking place on the French embassy in Niamey and also the closure of the Nigerian airspace and not allowing, therefore, people to make their own way out on regular booked flights, the French government has taken the decision to launch evacuation planes, and they will be in the country taking French and non-French other European citizens to safety outside Niger.
So what's behind this decision to evacuate these people then?
Well, that's due to the attacks that have been taking place on the French embassy and the deteriorating security situation since the coup last week in Niger, deposing the democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum, who came to office in 2021. France is calling for the immediate reinstatement of the president, along with ECOWAS, the regional grouping of 15 states, the Economic Community of West African States, meeting today just over the border in Nigeria. Also, that's the European Union's position, along with the African Union and the United States as well, that Mohamed Bazoum should continue in office. Ross, thank you very much. Our correspondent Ross Cullen in Paris.
You're watching CGTN, still ahead. Myanmar's deposed leader given a partial pardon, but Aung San Suu Kyi remains under house arrest. And we're with fans in London as England reach the knockout stages of the Women's World Cup with a comprehensive win over China.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliette Mann.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. 20 people die and dozens more are missing as torrential rains and flooding batter northern China for a fourth day. Russia blames Ukraine for a second drone attack on a Moscow skyscraper as both sides use the technology on targets away from the front line. And France pulls its citizens out of Niger after its coup, following protests and attacks on the French embassy in the capital Niamey. Myanmar's former leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, has had her jail term reduced after being pardoned on 5 of the 19 charges against her. She's been detained since February 2021, when the military ousted her democratically elected government. Our correspondent Patrick Falk reports.
Well, look, it's very difficult to say what sort of message the military government is trying to send with this move, but it certainly is a sudden development and it's surprised many people as well. But as many observers will point out, this is really a meaningless move. As you say, Aung San Suu Kyi has only been pardoned on 5 of the 19 offences for which she's been convicted. She was serving a 33-year jail sentence. She's still being detained, and so it's not clear still how much time she still has to serve. As one diplomatic source put it, it is a cosmetic move, one to signal to the international community without, if you will, doing anything that's really substantive. It will be seen by countries that favour more engagement with the military government, most notably Thailand. As we know, Thailand's foreign minister recently visited Aung San Suu Kyi in secret in Naypyidaw, and that will be seen by many people as part of what's led to this recent development. It is a move that was also seen as undermining the ASEAN bloc in having a unified response to the crisis in Myanmar. But as I say, this is a development which perhaps doesn't have an awful lot of meaning to it. It is perhaps a call by the military government to signal to the international community to stop its isolation and that it may be willing to provide further concessions if that's the case.
Legal troubles continue to mount for former US President Donald Trump as he rallies support for a bid to return to the White House. More charges against him could come as early as this week. Our correspondent Nitsa Soledad Perez reports.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump is bracing for more possible criminal indictments against him, involving alleged interference in the 2020 presidential election.
It's a great badge of honor, because I'm being indicted for you.
New indictments could come as soon as this week in Washington, D.C. and Georgia. The special counsel in D.C. already sent a letter to the former president telling him that he's a target of an investigation. In Georgia, the district attorney leading a separate investigation into Trump has promised a decision soon and orders stepped-up security around the Atlanta courthouse.
Some people may not be happy with the decisions that I was making, and sometimes when people are unhappy, they act in a way that could create harm.
Over the weekend, Trump rallied his supporters in Pennsylvania. According to U.S. media reports, Trump's political action committees are footing the bills for his legal defense. One of his political committees reportedly paid more than $40 million during the first half of 2023 to defend Trump and his associates. Most of these funds come from small dollar donations by Trump supporters.
The radical lunatic Democrats, they impeach me, they indict me, they rig our elections, and the Republicans just don't fight. We're going to take back our country, and we're going to make America great again.
On Monday, Trump's new co-defendant in the Mar-a-Lago classified document case made his first court appearance in Miami, Florida. Carlos de Oliveira, the property manager of Trump's Florida resort, faces charges including conspiracy to obstruct justice and lying to investigators. Prosecutors say the former president and Oliveira plotted to delete security footage to hamper the investigation.
The Justice Department has unfortunately decided to bring these charges against Mr. Dale. And now it's time for them to put their money where their mouth is. So I'm looking forward to seeing what discovery is.
Oliveira was released on bond and will be formally arraigned next month after he secures a Florida-based lawyer. All these illegal issues appear to be fueling Trump's base. Recent polls indicate that the now twice indicted former president is dominating the Republican field of candidates by a landslide margin, holding firm to his position as a favorite to become the 2024 Republican presidential nominee. Nitza Soledad Perez, CGTN, Miami.
HSBC's profits more than doubled in the first half of this year, powered by interest rate rises around the world. Pre-tax profits hit $21.7 billion, way above market expectations, and revenue was around $37 billion, two-thirds of which came from Asia. Robust retail banking is also cited as a factor for the rise, along with high interest rates. Australian Federal Police say they've charged a former childcare worker in what's been described as one of the worst child sex abuse cases in the country's history. It's alleged that the 45-year-old man abused 91 children over a 15-year period. He'll appear in court later this month. Fans, friends and family of Coco Lee have said their goodbyes to the singer-songwriter at her funeral in Hong Kong. She died by suicide in July, aged 48, after years of battling depression. Lee was best known for her powerful voice and live performances and was the first Asian singer to perform at the Oscars. To the football Women's World Cup now, and England have beaten China 6-1, securing their spot in the final 16. It was a stunning start for England, their first goal coming in the 4th minute. China came out firing in the second half and got a goal back through a penalty. But the Lionesses were at their best in Adelaide after their first two matches ended in tight 1-0 wins. China are now out of the competition. Well, our correspondent Siobhan McCall has been watching the match in London. So, Siobhan, this was a big win for England.
Hi, Robin. Yes, it was such an impressive win for England. As you mentioned, their first two wins in the tournament, they've got the 3 points, but they felt very laboured. Well, a different Lionesses side showed up today. And at the full-time whistle, the crowd here at Box Park in London, it was really just a rapturous applause, particularly for the performance of Lauren James, who really stunned. Unfortunately for China, they are out of the competition. They crash out at the group stage for the first time. And the nature of this defeat will be hard for them to take. It was England's joint record biggest win, I should say, at a World Cup. But speaking to the fans here at Box Park, they say that seeing China in the tournament and the fact that they did win their last game shows there's still a bright future for the Chinese national team despite the disappointment today.
There's some players that have been, testing our defenders, and also in their defence as well. There's a couple of players there that have been, impressed me a bit. So I think they could, in the future, go far. And obviously they were Asia Cup final winners, so they are a good team.
Well, this is, I think, was going to be the toughest game for them in the group, but they did get the win already against Haiti.
positive to take? Well, they're the only team to score against England so far in the tournament, and that goal, that penalty, was the first time in 5 matches at a World Cup that China have scored against European competition. This is a longer-term plan with the Chinese women's national team. They want to get the team back to the glory days in the 1990s, and the target is the 2035 World Cup. So this World Cup felt like a bit of a foundation tournament. There were young players making their debut, and the fact that they did win the Asian Women's Cup last year gives them something to be positive about. So Chinese fans disappointed, but the England fans here at Box Park so happy, and the England team will go into their round of 16 tie against Nigeria on August the 7th full of confidence and hopefully showing why they are one of the favourites to win the tournament.
We've been looking at some pictures of the fans watching the match where you are. What's the atmosphere been like?
It's been a really fabulous atmosphere, Robin. For those of us viewers who don't know what Box Park is, it's a pop-up mall. There's 3 sites in London. This is the one in Croydon. And it's kind of, as the England men's teams have done really well, it's become almost the official fan park of England fans. But it's a very different atmosphere here today compared to what we might be used to from men's football. You know, all those images of pints flying up in the air, quite raucous crowds. Well, it was a lot more, should I say, civilised, a very family-friendly atmosphere. And I think that's what Box Park were going for. The tickets came as family of 4, there was adult and children ones, and when you got here there was face painting, there was massages, just stuff that we probably wouldn't see in the men's game. And that's not to say that the men's game isn't inclusive for all, but I think this is where the women's football is really trying to get its target market for families, you know, for a safe, sort of inclusive atmosphere. And on the back of England winning Euro 2022, there was some research done that said that 55% of football fans quizzed just found the women's game was that much easier to kind of join if you weren't a fan beforehand. You could feel you could fit right in. We've seen a lot of families actually switch their season tickets from the English Premier League to the Women's Super League. So it's been a really good day at Box Park here. There was a scattering of Chinese fans. They actually left quietly before the final whistle, but they sat among the England fans, and I think everyone just had a really good time. The England fans, still some England fans here enjoying the moment, and the England players in Australia will no doubt be celebrating into the night, and then it's time to focus on that match against Nigeria.
Siobhan, thanks very much. Our correspondent Siobhan McCall in London. Well, in the other games, Denmark have defeated Haiti 2-0 in Perth to join England in the next round. Denmark started strongly with a 3rd-minute goal, and they kept up the pace throughout the match, finally adding a second near the end. The result ends a long drought for the Danes, who haven't reached the knockout stages since 1995. Defending champions, the USA advanced to the knockout round after struggling in a tense 0-0 with Portugal in Auckland. The world's #1 side needed a win or a draw to avoid elimination. They'll now face the winners of Group G in Melbourne on Sunday, which is very likely to be Sweden. And the Netherlands scored an impressive 7-0 win over Vietnam. The Dutch go through to the knockout stage, claiming top spot in Group E. They'll play the Group G runners-up in Sydney on Sunday. The headlines again. 20 people die and dozens more are missing as torrential rains and flooding batter northern China for a 4th day. Russia blames Ukraine for a second drone attack on a Moscow skyscraper as both sides use the technology on targets away from the front line. And France pulls its citizens out of Niger after its coup, following protests and attacks on the French embassy in the capital Niamey. And that is The World Today. Thanks for watching. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
This is CGTN,
China Global Television Network.